in Daniel chapter 4. And if you know anything about the book of Daniel, and we're still continuing on in our journey in the book of Daniel, I love the book of Daniel in so many ways. And the book of Daniel is so relevant to what we are going through here today, church. Can you say amen? So much that is relevant. And if I were to put a title to today's message, is simply End Time Insanity. Can you say amen? I know some of you guys are going, really? Insanity. Yes, but it's not what you think it is. Now, for us, we think insanity is probably some of the things that we see play out on different venues out there, whether it's social media or actual media, print or TV or whatever, just the craziness that you might see in the world that's going on. I know I got a little bit of some digs, if you will, the last couple of weeks when I mentioned about our generation and beyond making mud pies. Okay, you guys know we've had some of the younger generation go, man, y'all are crazy. Mud pies, who does that? Well, today, I would just say, to me, it's insane for people to pop in Tide Pods in your mouth. To me, I would take mud pies any day over, yeah, okay, guys? So, to me, we're talking about there's some craziness out there when you think that it's a challenge or okay to somehow ingest a Tide Pod. This is stuff you wash your clothes with. The only time I ever remember any kind of soap product in anybody's mouth was when somebody said something you shouldn't have said. Now, that goes back to a generation where there was actually consequences to your choices, okay? I'm not sure. Oh, man, God. Woo! Okay. That's back when there was consequences, and somehow I either got that or we got some habanero, something that really hurt really bad. But there's a way where, yes, there was some consequences to all that. That's not really the kind of insanity I'm referring to. And it's not the insanity that the Lord was talking about with Daniel. Now, in our journey, you guys have been with us. We're just coming out of chapter 3, going into chapter 4. And King Nebuchadnezzar, who sits on the throne now, we've got the nation of Israel that's in captivity. And you know that Babylonian culture was fighting so hard to transform and convert, if you will, the Israelites. And they picked out the ones who they thought, these are the influencers, these are the leaders, these are the ones who we want to change everything about them so we can make them and indoctrinate them into our Babylonian culture. Well, that's where Daniel comes in. We talked about the 3 Hebrew children. You got this incredible Abednego, Meshach, Abednego. You got all that's happening. They're thrown into the furnace so hot that it actually burned up the dude that thrown in there. Okay, guys. I mean, you got what an incredible story that was. King Nebuchadnezzar sitting back, watching all this play out, and he has what I call a light bulb moment, and he starts to, you see his heart starting to turn and change a little bit. And so you see this towards the end of chapter 3. He acknowledges the God of Daniel. He acknowledges the one true God that we all are familiar with as the God. He starts kind of changing his tune a little bit, and then you get into chapter 4, and he says that he talks about how he knows that the God of Daniel is the God of the Most High. I've seen signs and wonders. I mean, you know that he saw signs and wonders when he threw in 3 guys and then 4 guys. He looks in and there's 4 people with the figure of being Jesus in there with him. Of course, he saw some incredible things. How can you not have your heart, your mind, your very being changed when you see something like that happen? Come on, church, you still with me this morning? Amen. Like, can you imagine if you were to see a miracle of that magnitude and you're living one way and you know without a doubt that only the one true God can possibly do something like that? So King Nebuchadnezzar is taking a step back and evaluating his current situation and realizes, okay, there's got to be something true to this Hebrew God. There's something to this. So King Nebuchadnezzar starts to kind of change his mind, and then he has another dream. And this is going into chapter 4 now. I'm trying to summarize so we don't read it all together, but I'm going to tell you a little bit about it. And so he has this dream, and he's got some very vivid dreams. I don't know what the man ate that night, but I don't know. But he had an incredible dream. And This dream involves a big tree that just reaches as high as you can possibly see, and the limbs reach out as far as you can see, and just lush greenery on them with the leaves, and they're providing all this shade and nutrients and fruits. And it says those animals found shelter underneath there and they were fed, and just all this incredible blessings about this tree. And he's seeing all this, and he sees a messenger come from heaven, and he mandates that the tree be cut down. And now he's feeling pretty good about himself. He doesn't quite know what the dream means yet. But Nebuchadnezzar starts kind of going back to his old ways and starts thinking, this is a good thing. I imagine this is a good dream. I picture that tree being my enemies, and there they are just sitting all nice and fat, and everything's happening for them, and things are going great, and anything they want they're getting, and all that, and all of a sudden they get cut down, and this is a great thing. Now I need somebody to interpret that for me so I know that everything's good. Of course, like before, he can't find anybody really to interpret the dream, and there sits Daniel. Now Daniel's finds himself in another tight spot, because the God, the one true God, Yahweh, does give Daniel the interpretation, except the interpretation is not quite what Nebuchadnezzar is really ready to receive. Come on, church, you still with me this morning? Daniel's kind of thinking, listen, King, there's an interpretation to what's going on, but I don't think you understand where this story is going to go, and you're not going to like it. And so, but Daniel does go into interpreting the dream. But before we go into that, there was a prophecy that was inside this dream, or at least this story, as we continue in Daniel about King Nebuchadnezzar, about insanity. And the insanity, folks, what it comes down to is the insanity we're talking about. Insanity, I want to give you the actual Webster's dictionary, is deranged, mad, foolish, and senseless. You catch that? Deranged, mad, foolish, and senseless. And this is why that was prophesied. It was prophesied that King Nebuchadnezzar will turn and actually worship God. Don't just acknowledge that he's out there, but actually turn and worship the one true God and stop your prideful and selfish ways. Did you catch that? Stop your prideful and selfish ways. Then you'll live to be prosperous, at least in the economy that God speaks about. So that was part of their prophecy. That was the insanity. So I want to talk, before we even get to the remaining part of the story, I want to talk a little bit about observations of what this insane thinking is, because it really boils down to the sin of pride. The first one, if you guys are able to take notes, just jot some things down. The first observation I have is being self-sufficient instead of God-dependent. This is one of the observations of insanity. And I know we get in our minds and we think insanity is someone who's completely lost their mind, but when it comes to the things of God, if we come across and we act and we behave and we live our life as totally self-dependent on ourselves and not of God, this God calls it insanity. Come on, church, you still with me today? Amen. How does that show up in our prayerlessness? In our prayerlessness. When we think, God, I think I've got it handled from here on out. I don't need you right now. But I'll call on you when I need you. Now, don't raise your hand. Does anybody identify with anything like that at all? You know, one of the, and this will take some of you guys back. I understand in this generation, probably not around when this happened, but I was a staff pastor, a youth pastor back when this happened, but I'll never, ever forget the events of 9/11. Ever. I mean, it's one of the things where if somebody asks you, where were you when this happened, you can actually pinpoint where were you, right, church? Come on, you still with me? I know exactly where I was at. I can tell you what I was wearing. I can tell you everything. I can tell you everything about that day. Just so vivid, those images that were stuck in my mind, I'll never, ever forget. But as a pastor, or at least a staff pastor on staff of the church, I'll never forget the days after 9/11. Some of the most attended days in the history of church were right after 9/11. I mean, we were having people bang on our doors in all hours of the day and night, wanting to pray, just wanting to get in a sanctuary, just wanting to get somewhere where they can pray and get in the presence of where God is. Come on, church, is with me. I'll never forget the Sundays. Maybe you guys experienced it here in Longview. I wasn't here during that time, but I mean, the Sundays even, that first Sunday after 9/11, the events of 9/11, the place was packed. I remember setting out chairs just to have things, just to have church. And then, well, okay, God, we're back where we were. But thank you, God. My boy, you're awesome. I'll see you in the next tragedy. Can't help but, as a pastor now on this side of the chair, that side of the bench now, I can't help but reflect back and going, well, what changed? What changed? What's different now? Come on, church, follow me. I've talked about before about being careful in times of prosperity, because throughout the history of time, you'll learn this in history, young people, if you haven't learned it by now, you observe this as you go through history. There's not a nation in the world that's ever existed that's ever handled prosperity right. Because you go back to being just self-sufficient and you push God out of the equation. The Israelites did that, folks. You still live. Why do you think? This is why the Israelites are where they are. You understand that? They were captive. They were held captive by the Babylonians. King Nebuchadnezzar came in, but every time, all throughout the Old Testament, you can see this. Every time a nation or a people ever got to the point where we're going, God, we got this. We don't need you right now. You can just go and do whatever God things do, and I'll do whatever humans do. Since you created me, you know kind of a little idea of what that might be, but I don't need you right now. I'm just going to put you on the shelf. And the question to that, church, is can we stay God-dependent, especially in times of prosperity? I feel that, listen, and things are good now. Again, this is not political. Let's just go as far as the economy's sake and things that are happening there. We can put our little blinders on and think, okay, things are going good right now. So jobs are added. The economy's stronger. I mean, you go to the pump, you can know. I mean, it's there. Things are happening. I mean, we're good things are happening. We're happy about that. So it's so easy to go back and go, God, and thanks for the boost, but we got this on our own again. The church has such a dangerous place to be. Amen. Because that type of mentality and philosophy gets into the church. And we push God even out of the church. Try me out on that. Now, I'm not saying Longview First Assembly's got it all figured out, folks. We're not a perfect church, but this is why this pastor is standing in front of you, preaching an unpopular message, telling you we cannot push God out of our lives. Amen. We've got to be dependent on God in everything we do. That's just who we are. That's just preaching theology is we got to have God. Can I say it that way? In every area of our lives. It's easy to cry out to God when things are bad. We've done plenty of that, trust me. Stepping in our married life and even in having kids. If you have kids, you've probably cried out to God many times. God, take them now. We can make more. They sell them all over. We'll get another one. Take them now. Yes, of course you've cried. I think every parent. I've talked to many about that. Yes. We brought you in, we can take you out. But yes, that idea of being self-sufficient and not being God-dependent. Come on. The other observation, I'll just hurry along, is this was a huge one for me even personally, but being ungrateful. I guess is forgetting where we came from. And that kind of goes along the same lines. And if you really think about it really hard, the sin of pride is all throughout those two observations. God, we got this. I am self-sufficient. Thank you to where you brought me, but I don't need you right now. And when I do, I'll make sure and give you a call. And the other one is Well, I did this. I'm the one that worked for it. I'm the one that bought it. I'm the one that's doing all the work right now. I, and what else? I. Yeah, I know that's not popular. Just lost a lot of friends. But folks, listen. They kind of go hand in hand. We get to a point when we say, this is all mine's. To God, that's insanity. Because to him, that's the sin of pride, and it brought down many people all throughout time, including Lucifer himself. You've seen it before. And it hurts. I can't imagine what it does to God. I know what it does to me. I guess one of my kids can tell you, one of my biggest hot buttons, if you want to get me actually emotional about something besides tacos, is come at me with ungratefulness. And it is just, I'm just all over you like a spider monkey. Because that just sets me over the edge. Because I guess, and I told you, I'm very proud of where I came from, and I don't ever forget that. But I was raised to be thankful and grateful for everything. And I'm telling you, you'll be reminded of that when you don't have anything all of a sudden.
Amen.
And I feel like that's God's design sometimes. I really do. Well, let me just show you what that looks like. You know, 1 Corinthians 4:7 says, what do you have that God hasn't given you? And if everything you have is from God, why boast as though it were not a gift? Whew. I mean, that shows you right there, this isn't just Edgar talking, guys. I'm not just coming at you and I'm not angry. It's not like that at all, but the Word is telling us very clearly, everything we have belongs to God. Everything. And listen, and that thinking goes all throughout and every fiber of our being and how we behave and how we act and what we do. If we think the opposite of that. Come on, church, you still with me today? So, what does that lead into? Well, here's the rest of the story, because you have to see exactly what happened to Daniel. And you'll be remiss if you don't think it might not happen to you. But here's what happened. So in verse 22, we pick the story up. It says, Your Majesty. And again, Daniel's going, okay, I'm just going to bring it, but here's the truth, King. You're not going to like it, but here you go. Your Majesty, you are that tree. You are that tree. It's not your enemies. It's you. You have become great and strong. Your greatness has grown until it reaches the sky, and your dominion extends to distant parts of the earth. Your Majesty saw a Holy One, a messenger coming down from heaven and saying, cut down the tree and destroy it, but leave the stump. Did you catch that? Just a little side note, guys. God always leaves a way for us to come back. Just throwing that out there to you. I see that observation about a stump. If you ever cut down a stump in your yard and you haven't grounded up that stump and gotten rid of it, guess what happens after a little bit? You start seeing little sproutlets coming out of that stump. Why? Well, that stump's trying hard to come back, isn't it? God left a way to come back, but he also brought the hammer down, folks. He brought the distance. But leave the stump, bound with iron and bronze, in the grass of the field, while its roots remain in the ground. Let him be drenched with the dew of heaven. Let him live with the wild animals until 7 times pass by for him. Well, this is the interpretation. Your Majesty, and this is the decree the Most High has issued against my Lord the King. You, and you can put a capital circle around, you will be driven away from your people. You. And will live with the wild animals. You will eat grass like cattle and be drenched with the dew of heaven. This is the insanity that was prophesied about. 7 times will pass by before you. Now, if you look that up, that means there's only 2 seasons that they had really back then. It wasn't fall, summer, spring, winter. It was the dry season and the rainy season. So if you put the math on that, that's 3.5 years that would pass by. So 7 times will pass by for you until you acknowledge that the Most High is sovereign over the kingdoms of men and gives them to anyone he wishes. The command to leave the stump of the tree with its roots means that your kingdom will be restored to you. Did you catch that? When you acknowledge that heaven rules. Come on, church, that's what we're celebrating right there. There's good stuff there. But here's the problem with that. God's saying, listen, you have a sin of pride. You've let that get your way. You've experienced all this prosperity. You've experienced that, you've experienced this. But listen, Nebuchadnezzar, this is your problem. It's not you. It's not yours, it's mine. I gave this to you. Come on, church, you with me? This is what he's telling them. But now let's fast forward just a few years to where we are today. And pride is the root of so many of our sins, if you think about it. Murder. I don't know if anybody here's ever killed anybody, but murder? Well, isn't that against really the first commandment, which means there should be no other gods before you? Isn't that playing God when you kill somebody? Come on, anybody, y'all agree with that? Yeah. Adultery. Adultery. Pride. It's, I'm going to do it my way. I think better. I know better. Stealing. You're thinking, how in the world is that prideful? What's robbing? I mean, taking somebody is something. That's the sin of pride. Is God, I got this. I don't need you. But in my process of trying to do this my way, I'm going to do it my way. I'm going to take instead of actually earning it the way I should be earning. Come on, church, you still with me today? Here's the reality of it. We're going to end up like a stump if we stay on the course that some of us are on right now. Let me just get real. I know we're talking a Daniel story, thinking, man, that story about 4,000 years old. How does that apply to me today? Folks, listen, I'm trying to issue a warning right now. I hope you're listening. We're living in a time of prosperity right now. I know it doesn't seem like it, maybe, but we are, especially in this country. If you've ever been anywhere else in the world, anywhere else in the world, you know that we live in a very blessed nation. Very blessed. This is a prosperous nation. We're living in, by numbers, a very prosperous time. And that type of mentality can creep into the church. But see, that's where it gets to be a problem. Because this isn't, and us going, well, that's all about murderers and slanderers and all that kind of sin. No, we're just as guilty of this. Just as guilty. I'll tell you, I'll give you a little example. I wasn't going to go there, but this is the Holy Spirit. Please receive it that way. Our tithes and offerings. When we think that that's our money, you have to call this church. I know, some of you already shut me out from talking about money. You get upset at me all you want. I'm just saying, when God asks you what you did with his money, what are you going to answer? I made it. I earned it, God. Is that going to be your answer? Think about it. If you want to, this is Edgar's words, but go into the 3rd chapter of Malachi and see what he says about robbing. If you think that's Edgar's words, not my words at all. At all. But that can creep. That's what I meant by that mentality can creep into the church, because many of us, and I've had many conversations with people in churches going, but I made that. But who provided that for you? Who provided the job for you? Come on, church. Are you still with me this morning? Yeah. Lord knows I love you guys, but I love you so much that the selfishness and the sin of pride cannot exist in the church if we're going to move forward. And no, that's not popular preaching, but I'm not into popularity preaching. It's just not my thing. I'd rather just live by this. Because to be honest with you, I'm going to be judged whether I live by this or not you. It's going to be me standing before God. You're not going to be there with me, holding my hand, giving me a little lollipop. It's just going to be Edgar standing before his God. And God's going to say, but how did you pastor that church? When I gave you the responsibility to be over people, what did you teach them? Did you kind of wrap it up all nicely and kind of spoon fed them the little Hershey? Here's your kid right here. Here's the chocolate gospel. You just enjoy it. Or did you actually preach what was written in there that I gave out? Did you do that, Edgar? So guess what? I will be judged according to what I did. And as a pastor, I live by the words of, we've got to be a church, we've got to be a pastor. We are a family that lives by the obedience of the Holy Spirit, and obedience is found in God's Word. And church, this is what it comes down to. If we're not careful, we're going to live selfishly and miss out on the blessings of God. Are you still with me today? There's many that say, I don't know why this person is experiencing that, or I can't get this, or I can't get that. It all comes down to this: how are you living? Are you living obedient? Do you have any prideful situations happening in your life? Because if so, you're probably missing out on an abundance of what God wants to do for you. I ask myself that. This isn't judgmental, folks. It's just the truth. This is what God is trying to challenge us, and I'm trying to warn you. We can't live selfishly. We can't live pridefully. We've got to live on the convictions that's found in the Word of God and be obedient to everything. And we can't let that kind of spirit creep in, because it creeps in very easily. I promise you. I've been there. Even in ministry. To live pridefully and think, I built this, I built that. I didn't build this. This is God's church. The accountability I have in pastoring, I view you as God's people. There's a stewardship that happens in pastoring where I've been given the opportunity to be a pastor, and I take that very serious. Come on, church, you with me? And for that, this is what this is all about. This is why Daniel is such an incredible warning text today. So how is sanity restored? This is awesome. We'll pick up in verse 28. So all this happened to King Nebuchadnezzar. Everything Daniel told him happened. 12 months later, as the king was walking on the roof of the royal palace of Babylon, he said, this is all he did. This is all he said. Is not this the great Babylon I have built as a royal residence by my mighty power and for the glory of my majesty? Even as the words were on his lips, a voice came from heaven. This is what is decreed for you, King Nebuchadnezzar. Your royal authority has been taken from you. You will be driven away from people. You catch that, church? You will live with the wild animals. You will eat grass like the ox. 7 times will pass by you for you until you acknowledge that the Most High is sovereign over all the kingdoms on the earth and gives them to anyone he wishes. Immediately, what had been said about Nebuchadnezzar was fulfilled. He was driven away from people, ate grass like the ox. That's crazy. His body was drenched with the dew of heaven until his grew like the feathers of an eagle, and his nails like the claws of a bird. People, that is crazy. Can you imagine somebody walking around looking like that? We read that going, really? Okay, that's cool and everything. No, it's not cool. If someone walked into my house looking like a stinking bird, no, you're not even going to cross the threshold. For one thing, I'm going to get the only gun I have is a pellet gun, and I'm going to pepper you with it. Okay? That's crazy. But this is what he turned into. But if that's not insanity, I don't know what it is. That's crazy. All right, whatever. Maybe y'all see that every day. I don't. I don't see bird-like creatures every day. Okay? At the end of that time, I, Nebuchadnezzar, and this is what he says. At the end of that time, I, Nebuchadnezzar, raised my eyes towards heaven, and my sanity was restored. Then I praised the Most High. I honored and glorified him who lives forever. Did you catch that? That's me or not. His dominion is an eternal dominion. His kingdom endures from generation to generation. All the peoples of the earth are regarded as nothing. He does as he pleases with the powers of heaven and the peoples of the earth. No one can hold back his hand and say to him, what have you done? At the same time, listen to this, folks. This is what happens when you live under the obedience and the shelter of the Most High. Catch this. These are not Edgar's words, straight out of Scripture. At the same time, my sanity was restored. My honor and splendor were returned to me for the glory of my kingdom. My advisors and nobles sought me out, and I was restored to my throne and became even greater than before. Now I, Nebuchadnezzar, praise and exalt and glorify the King of heaven, because everything he does is right, and all his ways are just, and those who walk in pride he is able to what? Humble. I love the parts of the kind of God that we serve, that when he restores, and I pray this every time, if you notice when I pray for people, that when I pray for restoration, I pray that when God restores, he does things not just back to where they were, they're what? Better than they were before. And just that simple act of obedience and Nebuchadnezzar actually doing the right way and acknowledging that his ways are true. You still with me, church? What happened to him? Not only was he restored, but he was restored and some. That's the kind of God we serve. If we're ever on the fence, and this is being encouraging right now, church. If you're ever on the fence when it comes to going all in with God, with obedience to everything, let that be a lesson that when you go all in and live the way God intends us to live, He's going to have you in the palm of His hands. He knows. He knows. So with me, church? So what's the key? Exalt the King of Heaven. It's that simple. Exalt the King of Heaven. Acknowledge that God does everything right. And walk in humility. What does that look like? Let me read this to you. We're about to transition to communion, so you're going to see some people moving around. Please just keep your eye on here. So this is the key right here. And I'm going to a very familiar scripture in 2 Chronicles 7:14. You guys know where I'm going with this. This is the answer right here. 2 Chronicles 7:14 says that if my people who are called by my name, is that us? Yes. If my people who are called by my name will humble themselves, did you hear that? Did it say pride themselves? You go on and put on the best t-shirt, make sure it's printed right nice, and go around town, just tell people. No, that's not what he says. Humble yourselves. And here's the key. Pray. Can you say pray? Pray. If my people who are called by my name humble themselves and what? Pray. Church, we have to be a praying people. We have to be. We have to be a praying people. And yes, we can move the hand of God. The next one is, what else? Seek my face. What does that look like? That is totally having a dependency on who? God. It's not self-seeking, it is pray and seek my face. Make it all about me. Would you pursue me? See, God's already pursued us, folks. Do you understand that? He's pursued us and is pursuing us, sending His Son Jesus to us. That's pursuit. If you ever doubted that, read the gospel. All God is saying is, listen, I'm here. I'm waiting on you. Now seek me with everything you've got. You hear that, church? But there's a catch. And turn from your wicked ways. So it means we can't keep living how we were. And it doesn't mix. We can't pray and seek God, but still be over here doing everything we used to do. Do you understand that, church? We can't do both. It doesn't work that way. Go on, church. It doesn't work. That means you have to let go of something or someone or whatever it is that may be not lining up to God's Word. Seek, pray, turn. Those are all action words. And what does God do? So we quote that all the time when it comes to 2 Chronicles 7:14. I've seen so many people quote that and make it all about the prayer. But you know there's a conditional return to all that. Did you know that? Because what does God do? Then I will hear from heaven, forgive their sin, and I will heal their land. In this case, the stump will grow again. There's the way back. I don't know where you are in your relationship to God. I really don't. I pray for it often. More than probably you think. Church, I love you. I try to make sure you capture that. This Ayala family loves this church family. We're all in. If you have any questions about that, we'd love to tell you how. We're all in. That's how it works. We're all in with God and we're all in with you. And we're fighting for you, but we can't do everything for you. There's an action point that we all have to have. First of all, pray. Church, you got to pray. That's on you. This pastor can't pray for you. You got to pray. Next one is seek. Seek. Go after God. You see, I don't know what that looks like. just did it. Step forward. Step towards Him. It's that simple. Step towards Him. He'll give you rest. That's seeking. Lastly is turn. Turn from your old life. Turn from whatever it is that you've been weighing you down or distracting you or keeping you from being all in. And listen, I know that's a price to pay, isn't it? For some people, that's a very hard decision. It means having to maybe leave a certain situation or give up a job or give up friends or give up whatever. Come on, folks, I don't know how else to word that to you. It's not really a whole lot to ask, consider what Jesus did for you. All He's saying is just seek and turn. But God comes out with a conditional promise. He comes back and says, but I'll heal you. I'll forgive your sin. I'll provide. I will talk about abundance. I'll restore it. I'll make everything